At 70, I choose a peaceful and simple life. Why? 70 years have taught me that peace doesn't come from pleasing everyone, but from choosing what truly matters. In my younger years, I never missed a gathering, always eager to help friends, family, and neighbors. I believed a meaningful life was about being present for others. But with time, I realized that not every presence is valuable. Not every relationship is worth keeping, and not everyone appreciates the time and kindness I offer. Now, I see life differently. I no longer engage in empty conversations, maintain relationships out of obligation, or take on responsibilities that bring no joy. I choose to slow down and focus on those who truly love me, the moments that bring real happiness, and the quiet I once feared. Simplicity is not a loss. It is freedom. It allows me to appreciate each moment, not because I have more, but because I now understand what I truly need. When I started narrowing my social circle, people asked, "Don't you feel lonely?" But the truth is, I have never felt more at ease. I haven't abandoned people. I have simply chosen what aligns with me. I've stepped away from negativity, from relationships that only take without giving, from gatherings where I no longer feel connected. I now live intentionally, fewer relationships, but deeper ones. If you are entering this stage of life and feel exhausted by unnecessary burdens, reflect with me. Perhaps in these words you will find yourself, first, relationships change, keeping only what truly matters. When I was younger, I believed every relationship needed to be maintained. I always reached out, attended gatherings, and made sure to be available whenever someone needed me. I thought being a good person meant staying connected with friends, colleagues, and distant relatives. But now, at 70, I see things differently. Not all relationships are worth keeping, and not everyone values my presence as I once assumed. For years, I made an effort to sustain old connections, believing that staying in touch showed care and responsibility. But over time, I felt exhausted. Some people only reached out when they needed something, yet disappeared when I needed support. I once viewed these relationships as essential, but now I understand that real connections are not obligations. They are mutual choices. I had an old friend, Richard, with whom I had shared many phases of life. However, I noticed that if I didn't initiate contact, he never did. One day, I decided to stop calling first. And then, nothing. No messages, no unexpected calls. That's when I realized that some relationships only exist because we are the ones keeping them alive. Once we stop, they naturally fade away. At first, I felt a tinge of sadness, but I soon realized that letting go doesn't mean losing a part of myself. Now, I no longer invest my energy in one-sided connections. Instead, I focus on the people who genuinely want me in their lives. My conversations with true friends are more meaningful, not because they happen often, but because they are sincere and fulfilling. Family, too, was something I once believed required constant effort. But not every family relationship brings warmth. I have relatives I cherish deeply, but also those whose presence only brings tension and exhaustion. I used to feel obligated to stay connected with all family members, but I now see that being related doesn't always mean we are meant to be close. My granddaughter, Emily, was once very attached to me as a child, but as she grew older, life filled with responsibilities, work, relationships, and new priorities. At first I felt hurt when she reached out less often, but then I understood. Life moves forward, and everyone has their own path. I don't resent her or feel abandoned. I simply accept that relationships evolve, and I don't need to hold on to them in the same way to prove they still matter. These years have taught me an important lesson. Not all relationships are meant to last forever. I no longer hold on to connections out of duty. If a relationship drains me more than it fulfills me, I let it go. I don't chase. I don't overextend myself. Those who truly care will remain, whether near or far. I now value quality over quantity. I don't need a long list of friends on social media or family members who only gather out of formality. I need people who bring peace and authenticity into my life, those with whom I can sit in comfortable silence, those who genuinely appreciate our time together. I have also stopped feeling guilty about declining invitations that no longer align with me. I no longer attend crowded events out of politeness, nor do I force myself to maintain relationships that feel empty. Instead, I dedicate my time to what truly brings me joy, rather than simply fulfilling expectations. So, if you feel exhausted trying to maintain relationships that no longer feel meaningful, ask yourself, does this bring me happiness? Am I staying out of obligation or fear of letting go? If the answer is no, have the courage to move forward. Relationships should be built on sincerity, not obligation. 70 years of life have taught me that peace doesn't come from holding on to everyone. It comes from cherishing those who truly matter. And ever since I chose to live this way, I have never felt lighter. Trust becomes more complex. Learning to trust the right people and believe in myself. After realizing that not every relationship is worth maintaining, I came to an even deeper understanding. Trust should not be given unconditionally. I once believed that sincerity and kindness would naturally be reciprocated. I placed trust in friendships, family, and long-term relationships, thinking that honesty alone would keep them strong. But over time, I learned that not everyone values trust the same way, and sometimes the ones we trust the most are the ones who disappoint us the deepest. I recall placing complete trust in my longtime friend, Martin. We had shared over 30 years of friendship, supporting each other through life's highs and lows. If there was anyone I believe I could count on, it was him. One day, while going through a small financial struggle, I confided in him, not for help, but simply to express my thoughts. I expected support or, at the very least, discretion. Yet soon after, I heard others discussing my situation with exaggerated details I had never shared. I was shocked that someone I trusted so deeply had betrayed my confidence. That experience did more than end a friendship. It shattered my belief that kindness is always returned with kindness. I didn't grow resentful, but I did become more cautious. I learned that not everyone deserves my trust, and not every story needs to be shared. At 70, I am more careful with trust. I no longer feel the need to reveal my struggles or thoughts to just anyone. Trust, I now realize, is something precious, meant only for those who have proven themselves worthy. More importantly, I have learned that trusting myself is just as important as trusting others. In my younger years, I often ignored my instincts. If I felt uneasy about someone, I convinced myself I was being too skeptical. If a situation felt wrong, I brushed off my doubts. Time and again, I later realized that my intuition had been right. I had just ignored it. Now, I listen to my instincts. If a relationship makes me uneasy, I don't justify it. If someone seems insincere, I don't force myself to believe otherwise. I have learned that intuition is a powerful guide, often protecting us before we even realize it. I also no longer feel the need to explain my choices. If I choose to distance myself from someone, I don't owe them a reason. If I decide to keep certain things private, I don't need to justify it. Protecting my trust is a way of protecting my peace. That said, I have not lost faith in people. There are still those who honor their word, who value deep connections, and who respect trust. I still have true friends, those I can confide in without fear of betrayal. I still meet people who bring meaning and positivity into my life, but the difference now is that I give my trust slowly, carefully, and only to those who prove they deserve it. I remember meeting my neighbor Thomas. He was reserved, a man of few words. At first I assumed he was distant, but over time I realized he was simply someone who didn't rush into trust. Yet once he did, his loyalty was unwavering. Our conversations were not filled with small talk, but deep, thoughtful discussions about life and what truly matters. Through that friendship, I was reminded that trust still exists. It just needs to be built with care. Lessons in trust. At 70, I have learned that trust must be earned. I now understand. Not everyone deserves my trust. Listening to my intuition is one of life's most valuable skills. I don't need to explain my choices. My peace matters more than justifying myself. Trust still exists, but it should be given slowly and cautiously. 70 years of life have taught me that losing blind trust is not a loss. It is wisdom. The true lesson is not in losing trust, but in learning to trust the right people, and, above all, to trust myself. And as I live with this awareness, I have never felt more at peace. The world has changed. I choose simplicity and stillness. After realizing that not everyone deserves my trust, I began to see the world differently. It wasn't just people who changed. Life itself had become faster, louder, and more distant. To maintain inner peace, I had to be selective, not just with relationships, but also with how I engaged with the world. When I was young, life moved more slowly. People spent real time together. Conversations were unhurried, and no one was constantly interrupted by phones. I remember when neighbors would drop by unannounced, simply to share tea and talk. I remember family meals where we truly listened to each other instead of being distracted by screens. But over time, everything changed. Now, despite having more ways to stay connected, text messages, video calls, social media, genuine human connection feels weaker. A birthday greeting is now just a short message instead of a heartfelt visit. Conversations are brief, rushed, and lack depth. I tried adapting. I created a social media account, followed my children's and grandchildren's updates, and embraced modern communication. But eventually I realized these interactions didn't make me feel closer to anyone. Seeing photos of my grandchildren on a screen could never replace holding them in my arms. Receiving messages from old friends wasn't the same as looking into their eyes and hearing their voices. So, I made a choice to slow down, to embrace simplicity, and to step away from the hurried pace of the world. I no longer feel the need to stay updated on everything, to reply to messages immediately, or to share my life online. Instead, I dedicate my time to what truly matters. Now I cherish peaceful mornings. No ringing phones, no endless news updates, just me, a cup of tea, and the sounds of nature. I spend more time reading and reflecting, rather than scrolling through fleeting headlines. I have even returned to writing letters because I find that putting pen to paper connects me with my thoughts in a way that typing never could. I have also changed how I spend time with loved ones. Instead of quick phone calls, I value in-person meetings more than ever. I don't need large gatherings or social events filled with small talk. Just a quiet, meaningful meal with those who truly care about me is enough. When I shared these thoughts with a few peers, some said I was falling behind and that we must keep up with the times. But I don't see it that way. I am not resisting change. I am simply choosing what brings me peace. Not everything modern is better, and not every change must be embraced. Because in the end, I have learned that peace doesn't come from chasing the world, It comes from knowing when to step back. I no longer feel pressured to stay informed about everything, to engage in shallow conversations, or to prove that I can keep up with modern life. I know that I don't have to live at someone else's pace. I only need to live in a way that brings me serenity. So, if you too feel that the world has become too loud, if you find yourself chasing things that don't truly bring you joy, I encourage you to slow down. Take time for the simple, meaningful moments. Reconnect with the values that have always been important to you. Choose a life that brings you peace, because in the end, life isn't about keeping up with others. It's about finding joy in what we already have. And in those quiet moments, you may discover something the modern world can never offer: true tranquility. Silence is not loneliness, it is peace. After learning to slow down in a fast-moving world, I realized something profound. Silence does not mean loneliness. It is a precious gift I have come to cherish. When I was younger, I feared silence. I thrived in lively conversations, crowded gatherings, and nights filled with laughter among friends. I believed that being surrounded by people meant I was connected and fulfilled. But as time passed, I realized that a room full of people does not always bring warmth, and silence is not emptiness. There was a time when I felt a sense of loss as social gatherings became less frequent, as friends called less often, and as loved ones became consumed with their own lives. I questioned my worth. Was I being forgotten? Did I no longer matter? But over time, I understood that life constantly shifts, and I cannot expect everything to remain the same. An old friend, Samuel, once told me, "Silence is where the soul finds rest." At the time, I did not fully grasp his words, but now they resonate with me more than ever. I have learned to embrace silence rather than fear it. Now, I find joy in quiet mornings with a cup of tea, watching sunlight filter through the window, listening to birds in the garden. I appreciate solitary walks where I breathe in fresh air and feel each step grounding me. I cherish peaceful evenings reading a good book, free from the rush of calls or notifications. In these moments of silence, I do not feel lonely. I feel truly alive. Silence allows me to reflect on my journey, not with regret, but with gratitude. I no longer dwell on what ifs or if-onlys. Instead, I accept that every choice I made holds meaning. It has also taught me to love myself more. In my younger years, I constantly sought approval, worried about being accepted and loved. Now I know the most important love is the one I have for myself. I no longer feel the need to prove anything to anyone or chase society's expectations. I simply live in a way that brings me peace. Because of silence, I now value the relationships that remain in my life even more. Before, I spent hours at social events that felt obligatory, but now I choose to be with people who truly appreciate me. Those who can sit with me in comfortable silence without the need for constant conversation. I remember when my daughter Mary asked me, "Dad, do you feel sad that you don't meet up with friends as often?" I smiled and told her, "No, sweetheart. I still have dear friends. But now I prefer meaningful conversations over loud gatherings. I don't need many people around me, just the ones who truly matter." And that is the truth. I no longer need large gatherings. I only need a quiet afternoon with a close friend, sipping tea, reminiscing, and sharing laughter. Silence has also helped me rediscover the beauty in simple things. A cool breeze on a summer day, the soothing sound of rain from my porch, a warm meal shared with family. I once thought happiness came from grand achievements, success, recognition, financial security. But now I understand that true happiness is found in the simplest moments. And to those who fear loneliness, I say this: do not fear silence. That is when you truly hear yourself. 70 years of life have taught me that silence is not a loss. It is a gift. It allows me to see what truly matters, let go of the unnecessary, and appreciate life's quiet beauty. So I no longer try to fill the silence with meaningless conversations or distractions. I embrace it, savor it, and let it become a part of my life. I am not lonely. I am simply living more peacefully, deeply, and meaningfully, distancing from negativity, protecting my inner peace. After learning to embrace silence without feeling lonely, I realized that peace is not only found within, but also in knowing how to distance myself from external negativity. At 70, I understand that peace is a choice, and to protect it, I must be mindful of what I allow into my life, whether it's people, conversations, or relationships. I once tried to please everyone, always offering help when needed, but now I recognize that not everyone deserves my time and energy. There was a time when I was caught in endless conversations filled with complaints. I had an acquaintance, Charles, who constantly talked about how the world was falling apart, how society was declining, how younger generations lacked respect, how everything used to be better. Every time I met him, I felt as though I was being pulled into a cycle of negativity. Eventually, I realized that every interaction with him left me feeling drained rather than uplifted. That was when I decided to step away from discussions that brought no positive value. I did not blame or judge, but I knew I had the right to choose where I invest my energy. Letting go of relationships that no longer serve me. When I was younger, I believed that friendships should last forever and that every relationship needed effort. I would always reach out, check in, and maintain connections, even when they no longer felt meaningful. But over time, I realized that not all relationships are worth keeping. I had an old friend, Leonard, whom I once considered a soulmate. But as time passed, I noticed that every conversation with him revolved around complaints, jealousy, and comparisons. He constantly spoke about what he lacked, what others had, and the disappointments he carried. I once thought I could help him see things differently, but then I understood that people only change when they want to. One day, I stopped initiating contact. And what happened? Nothing. No messages, no calls. That was when I realized some relationships exist only because we keep them alive. When we stop trying, they simply fade away. And instead of regret, I felt relief. Choosing joy, letting go of what drains me. Not everything deserves my energy. I choose to read books that bring me peace instead of news that fills me with worry. I choose to watch films that inspire rather than programs that stir up conflict. I choose to spend time with people who uplift me rather than those who drain me. I no longer feel the need to prove anything to anyone. I no longer chase things that society deems important. I choose simplicity. I choose lightness. And I choose what truly brings me joy. Peace is a choice. 70 years of life have taught me that peace is not automatic. It is something we must actively protect. I no longer engage in meaningless debates. I no longer hold on to relationships that bring no value. I distance myself from negativity and those who only complain. Instead, I devote my time to what truly matters. A quiet morning with a cup of tea, a heartfelt conversation with a loved one, a good book that nourishes my soul. And if someone asks, "Do you feel lonely after letting go of so much?" I will smile and say, "No, my dear. I am simply choosing peace." A shared experience, choosing peace and meaning. After learning to distance myself from negativity and protect my peace, I realized something even more profound. I am not alone in this journey. My thoughts, emotions, and decisions are not just personal reflections. They're shared by many at this stage of life. I once questioned my choices. Am I withdrawing too much? Am I becoming too distant from the world? Am I the only one who feels this way? But through conversations with others in my generation, I understood that this feeling is universal. I remember having coffee with my old friend William. He was always the sociable one, the life of every gathering. But that day, he admitted, "The older I get, the more I want simplicity. I used to think having many friends made life better, but now I only need a few true ones, and I feel much lighter." I smiled because I knew exactly what he meant. The natural shift that comes with age. When we're young, we seek connections, recognition, and as many relationships as possible. But as we grow older, we realize quality matters more than quantity. I have met many people my age, neighbors, old friends, and even strangers in the park, and they all share the same realization. They no longer spend time on superficial relationships, feel obligated to attend large gatherings, engage in unnecessary conflicts, or chase busyness that brings no real joy. I recall a conversation with Margaret, a neighbor who, when asked if she still met up with friends often, smiled and said, "I used to, but not so much anymore. I prefer real conversations, not meetings just for politeness." Her words resonated with me. How much of our lives do we spend doing things we don't truly want to, simply out of obligation? Not loneliness, but a different way of living. Many assume that as we age and narrow our social circles, we become lonely. But the truth is quite the opposite. We are not lonely. We are simply choosing a different way of living. I no longer feel the need to attend every event or maintain every relationship, but that doesn't mean I don't value friendship or family. I still cherish deep connections, but am more selective now. A peaceful afternoon with a dear friend, sipping tea and sharing meaningful thoughts, holds more value than a crowded party filled with small talk. A heartfelt message from a loved one means more than 100 polite greetings. No longer trying to please everyone. One of the most liberating realizations of this stage in life is that I no longer need to please everyone. I spent years trying to meet expectations, maintain relationships, and attend every event. But now I understand that I have the right to choose what truly matters. I no longer feel guilty for saying no to gatherings I don't enjoy. I no longer feel obligated to stay in touch with people with whom I no longer share a true connection. I no longer feel pressured to explain my choices. My peace is more important than satisfying others. A shared experience, a common feeling. Through conversations with friends, I have realized that this feeling is not just mine. It is shared by many at this stage of life. We are all undergoing a natural transition, shifting from seeking external validation to embracing deeper, more meaningful values. The most beautiful part? We have no regrets. We do not feel like we are missing out when we no longer attend unnecessary social gatherings. We do not feel lonely when we choose solitude over noise. We do not feel the need to keep up with the world because we understand that true peace comes from within. So if you find yourself stepping away from things that no longer hold meaning, remember, you are not alone. This is not a step backward. It is a meaningful step forward. We are not losing anything. We are simply choosing what is truly worthy of our time and soul. Reflections on life. Choosing peace and meaning. After 70 years, I have learned that peace is not something that just happens. It is a choice. I must actively let go of what no longer serves me, hold on to what truly matters, and most importantly, value myself. Time becomes more precious as we age, and I no longer waste it on shallow relationships or meaningless conversations. Instead, I spend it with those who genuinely care about me, on simple yet meaningful moments, and on the small joys I once overlooked. I have accepted that relationships change. Not everyone stays, and that is natural. I no longer hold on to those who have chosen to walk away or maintain relationships that drain me. Instead, I focus on the people who truly appreciate and understand me. I have also learned to trust more cautiously. Not everyone deserves it, and not every story needs to be shared. I trust those who have proven themselves, but above all, I trust my intuition. The world has changed, but I do not have to change with it. I no longer feel pressured to keep up with its fast pace or adapt to things that do not bring me joy. I choose to slow down, embrace simplicity, and fully enjoy each moment. Most importantly, I understand that solitude is not loneliness. It is peace. I do not need to be constantly surrounded by people to feel whole. I find fulfillment in quiet moments, reflection, and simple activities that bring me joy. At 70, I no longer fear stepping away from negativity. I avoid meaningless arguments, toxic relationships, and the judgments of others. I focus only on what brings me peace. As I share these thoughts, I realize this is not just my story. It is the story of many. We have traveled a long journey and now wish to live more lightly, fully, and meaningfully. If you feel the same, know you are not alone. Choosing simplicity, keeping only what truly matters, and distancing yourself from negativity is not withdrawal. It is wisdom. So, choose peace. Cherish your time. Focus on the people and moments that matter. Because in the end, happiness is not found in noise, but in the quiet moments where we truly feel at peace.